My name is Alanis Obomsawin. I am a Abenaki woman. I come from a community called Odanak in the province of Quebec. And I'm a filmmaker for a very long time. My main reason was to influence change in the educational system. At that time, still the educational system in terms of teaching the history of Canada was very, very prejudiced and very ugly towards our people. And the books were written in general by the brothers of the Catholic religion. And when you're in it, it's very difficult to understand what's happening, but it was very bad. And when I figured it out, I decided that I felt that the children should hear another story. And this is how in those days, I wasn't thinking of making films. I knew nothing about it. But I was singing and telling stories. And I did hundreds of schools across the country, including a lot of residential schools. Well, it took quite a while because I was getting beat up a lot. I was the only Indigenous person in that school. And it was pretty bad. And for the longest time, for several years, I just let it happen. I just tried to run. And when I was 12 years old, I changed. That's when my father died. And I made up my mind that nobody's going to beat me up again. Well, I don't know if you can call it traditional, but I was brought up on a reserve in Odanak. And of course, there was traditional ways of the people. But the Catholic Church was very much controlling. And so a lot of the culture, and it was also difficult with the language, because if you spoke your language, you were punished for it. So all those things put together, you knew that there's something really wrong. And almost every house, people were speaking Abenaki. But in school, you could not do that. And there was two religions. There was the Catholic religion, which had a lot of control, and there was the Anglican Church also. So those who went to the Anglican Church, their second language was English. Those who went to the Catholic Church, it was French that was very much present. Yeah. So most of all the women were basket makers out of ash and sweetgrass. And the men did a lot of sculptures and birch canoe, and also were guides in the bush for hunting and fishing in one particular area in Quebec. I didn't get into filmmaking. I didn't apply or nothing like that. I knew nothing about films. There was nothing. I wasn't even thinking of that. I hardly ever been to a movie. I didn't know what movie was. One time I heard the children in the recreation time in French. They said, "Oh, on est allé au vu." We went to you can't translate exactly in English, but we went to the movies. But myself, when I heard that, I thought it was a country or a city or a place. And anyway, that's a weird story. So I wasn't thinking of that at all. I realized that these books were written in design to create hate towards our people. It was very, very clear by then for me. So this is when I said, if the children could hear other stories, they would feel different. Whenever the teacher opened the books for history of Canada, I knew I was going to get beat up that day. So that's how I started. I started working with scouts, telling them stories and traveling with them. And scouts get a lot of education towards land and plants, and it's amazing what they get. It's a very special education. And after a while, I went to a school, and then it took no time. I could never do enough. I did a lot of touring in a lot of schools through people who were organized that way. And in 1960, when we became citizens of the country, it was quite a different atmosphere. All the things that we were not allowed to do, all of a sudden you were allowed to have powwow, you were allowed to have ceremonies. There was a big, big change. And one day I was in my community, I was playing with the children, and two of them, perhaps maybe 8 or 9 years old, came and they were crying, and I said, "What are you crying for?" They said, "Well, we went swimming, we want to go swimming to the municipality next door." And they said, "No savage here, you're not coming in." So at the time, I remember the feeling. I thought, oh my God, I was quite well known as a singer. I could easily make a fuss and say they're racist and force them to take our children in. And I said, why should we send our children where they're not wanted? Everything was happening so quick in my mind. So I said to the children, don't worry, we'll get our own swimming pool. So the next day, the children are saying, where's the pool? So I went to the band council and asked them, I said, I think I should make a campaign to build a swimming pool. And I got the permission, and I thought it would be easy, but it was far from being easy. It was very difficult. And from that, there's a man called Ron Kelly who made a film about my campaign for CBC. And it was shown on prime time on a program in those days called Telescope. So from that, some producers and director at the film board saw it and wanted to meet with me. So I went over there to meet them. I knew nothing about the film board, nothing. And it was interesting because they said, we want you to do what you do in the classroom with the directors and producers here. And, it wasn't hard for me. I was doing that all the time. And then from that, they showed me they had a studio which was called Multimedia. And everything they did in there was for education. So I got very excited. And that's how I started. In 1967, they gave me a contract to be a consultant on a film, which I did. And I quickly realized that I was just being used to get into the reservations. So I told them, I'm never doing this again. I was scared that if the people didn't like the film, they would say, well, it's Alanis who brought them here. So I never did that again. And then they gave me my own contracts, and then I started making educational kits, which was heaven for me. And those educational kits were made of film fix, which was a band of 35 mil celluloid that you tell your story on. And it was very simple. Like in the classroom, most classrooms had those small projectors that the strip could go through, and the sound would come to on a long playing record over here. And for me, it was incredible because I started doing interviews, and it was the voice in one community. It was the voice of the people themselves, telling the history, and that was for me such a gift to for our people to finally do it themselves. That's how I started. Well, there was plenty in those days, you know, it was really a man's world in terms of filmmaking. Like I was at the very bottom of the line. And whenever there was something happening that was very upsetting, and so I immediately thought, it's because I'm, in those days we used to say native. And I also realized that being a woman was a problem. That was incredible. So I fought for everything, for every step, for many years. But I won. So far, I've made 54 films. And I love the film board. Like at the end of it, the support that I got from the board is incredible. But to begin with, for many years, every film, it was very difficult to finish them, to get, I had to raise money every time, and the film board would match what I would raise. So that alone was a very big challenge. You could only go to federal agencies, and you know, I found it very humiliating. But I believed in what I was doing so strongly that whatever fight I had to do, I did it to the end. Most of the films I made, I've had to fight for. And it's been very difficult. You know, we're talking about the 70s, 80s. I had difficulties to do these films the way I want, and to get them to be to the end. Often I didn't have enough money to do it the way I wanted because I just had the money. So every one of them, when I look at any of the film, I see another film. I see what difficulties I had. I see all kinds of terrible stuff and good stuff. So they're all important. And they all have made a change in the situation, and especially for young people who want to make films. Making a place and fighting for a section in all our institutions, which we have. And it's not like when I started now, you know, there is room, there is money at the film board, CBC, Telefilm, every institution has a section for Indigenous people. Well, I'm telling you, it's been a long, long journey, but it's there. So it's wonderful for any young person or any age wants to do something. I keep telling them, just look into your heart. What would you like to be? What do you think you have a gift for? And go for it. Go apply, because today everything is possible. That's how it is. There is freedom. If a young person wants to write a story that doesn't exist, that's all right also. Of course, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and for me, it's sacred. For me, the voice, the word is sacred. So I spend a long time interviewing people before I come there with a camera. There's also people who are poets, who are writers, and have ideas of making a new story. That's also exciting, you know. It's wonderful. I think the doors are open, and if ever there's a time that our people can do something, get the money for it, be encouraged, it's now. Now, if you have an opinion on a story that's not yours, right there's something wrong. It's the person in front of you who's gone through a certain life or who know what the story is. Who are you to think that you know better? No, that's wrong. And that's how sometimes some film comes out and people are very angry and disappointed. What you have to make sure is that you have professional equipment with a good recorder that I can tape people, just sound. And I'll sit like you are talking to me now the same way, and I will have a conversation, and I will want to hear. Sometimes I know there's a particular subject that's happened and is crucial to the community, so we're going to discuss that. And that proves to be, to me, to my life as a filmmaker, it's the most important aspect of filmmaking for me. Of course, I'm always talking about documentary filmmaking, because the person, if I come in with a crew and in a community, and the person that I want to interview might be very intimidated, is 3, 4 people, 5 people sometimes, and wondering, is my hair okay? Is my floor clean? You know, all that. So that by me coming in just with a tape recorder and we're having a discussion, then they get to know me, I get to know them personally, and then I come home, I get this transcribed, and I read it. And then I decide, and I might say, oh, this is not clear, I gotta go back. I'm gonna go back, telephone the person, and I say, can we have another session? I'm not sure if I understand this right. And sometimes it's possible that I might go there 3, 4 times. And then when I feel I have it, now I understand what went on. I hear the beginning, I hear the end, it becomes. So then I explain to the person, I'm going to come with a crew, and by now this person knows me very well and doesn't worry, is she going to make me say something that I don't want to say, you know, all that stuff. I would never do that. And not only that, I tell them, if you say something to me, you go to bed tonight and you say, oh my God, I wish I hadn't said that. You regret. I said, look, it even happened to me many times. Tell me, and I erase the thing, or I won't use it. So they feel comfort that I'm not going to play tricks on them. And I wouldn't cheat them either. You know, it's happened where people say, oh, I don't want that story to come out. Okay, so it won't come out. So all that makes a very different relationship with the person, the people that I'm working with, and the community who see me going in. I always tell the band office when I'm doing that, so that they don't have to wonder, what is she doing here, you know, without my permission or whatever. So then I come with a crew and I interview the person again on the same subject. I would never say to somebody, could you repeat this, please? I also see people doing that. And this is so insulting. And then by the time I come to the cutting room, this is after we did all the shooting we wanted to do, I can always go back to the first tapes with other images. And what you mustn't forget, the first time a person is telling a story, the voice is like the waves. If they're telling a story that's very important to them, and sometimes there's a lot of sadness or a lot of joy, the sound of the voice changes. And that part is very sacred. So that by the time you're in the cutting room, you can always go back to these very moving moments with other images. And the audience who's looking and hearing know who the person is. They've seen her or him on the screen, and then you hear this sound, which is always very rich. And this is what I tell young people, because most people come with a video camera and that's how they start their film. I never do that. It's important that before you go in, if you don't tell yourself in your mind, this is not what you want to hear. This is somebody else's story. And you have to be loving what you're doing and generous and be able to respect whoever's talking to you. They all need to be told. Everybody is important. Each person, it doesn't matter who you are. You have a story, and that's important. It's being, it's life. Life is sacred for all people. And you have to respect life. That goes for animals, that goes for plant life, that goes for everything. What we're going through now is much more profound than hope. I don't spend my life hoping, I do. And I see that right now it's such an exciting time. Because it is possible, not only that, but people who have the money, who could make it possible for you, are dying for you to come in and apply. It's a very different time. Believe you me, it wasn't like that when I started. And I feel very happy, and I'm very excited with what all these young people are doing. When I go to festival and I watch all their films, I'm just saying, you know, I won't worry so much if I die tomorrow. There's a lot of people doing my work. Well, first of all, what we're looking for at this time is to get our people to tell their own story. But that doesn't stop any of our people to work with someone that's not Indigenous. There are good people everywhere, and there are good people amongst white people and all over. It's a very different time. And there is possibility to work together. It's not to take over an Indigenous story if you are not Indigenous. But you can work together. You can be helpful, and it can be a wonderful marriage. You know? It's happening all over. I work with a lot of people that are not Indigenous. And the help that I get and the support from them is wonderful. First of all, is to give them confidence in themselves, that everything is possible, nothing is big that you think it's impossible. And because of the fact that there is money, there is help everywhere, people are interested in hearing from us, and it's a very, very rich time. And of course, if you are working in fiction, it's different than if you are working in documentary, because if you're doing a fiction, you as a director have to write the story. But the job of the director is supposed to be the storyteller. So the director better know what the story is. If the director doesn't, the producer or the editor is just going to take over, and it's going to be a total different story that you never thought of. So those are the kinds of things you have to know what your responsibility is when you're part of a crew. The person, of course, who does sound is just so, so incredible, that responsibility. Of course, I have a great love for the word, and what we're lacking in our people right now is excellence in the different disciplines. It's hard to get an Indigenous person say, oh, I want to make a film, I want to make films. They're just thinking they want to do the whole thing. They don't realize how important and how enriching it is that if you have put a crew together, that each one of them really know what their responsibility is. And realize, like I often have a lot of argument when I do lectures and masterclasses at the university level. What bothers me, like in general, the teacher might say, oh, you don't have to worry about sound. We can always redo it. We go back in the theater. I can't stand that. I cannot stand that. Because I come from the hearing and how sacred that is. The first tape that I do with people. And there's that manner, you know, that I see a lot. And I imagine if they're doing fictions, they can think like that to a certain point. They say, well, you know, if it's not right, we'll redo it in the theater. You can't do this with documentary. Imagine somebody cries and they're very moved and they're doing something and it's all on tape. Are you going to go and say, could you do it the same? Would you cry and do? Can you imagine that? You want to kill somebody who does that. Yeah. That's the difference. I know that a lot of people are intimidated and they're very shy. But if you feel that way, you're very shy, you're scared and all those things, you have to talk to yourself. You have to help yourself in having profound feeling that you have. Every one of us has a gift somewhere and feelings that it applies in their way of life. Doesn't matter which discipline they're in. To give yourself the value of what you are and what you can be and what you will be. You're not less than anybody else. And the trouble with our people, they've always been made feel they should be invisible and less. But by now, I think most people know that that's not true. Because I think our people are so beautiful and they don't know it. And I'm going to keep telling them until I die.